This is No Place Like Home in Conversation With, a podcast exploring the creative side of football by NPLH Studio. I'm Joseph Fordham, and each episode I speak with the people shaping how we see the game. Okay, bear with me on the pronunciation of this one. In this episode, I speak with comedian Alexis Guerreros. He shares his unique journey from corporate America to the world of stand-up, sports fandom, and content creation as co-founder of Soccer Cooligans. We discuss growing up in New Jersey, how that planted the seeds of his passion for the game and formed the skills that would go on to make him a success in both a corporate environment and stand-up. Alexis explains how his passions intersect, the importance in that, and the lessons learned along the way about authenticity, risk-taking, and building a vibrant community. He also hates Elvis. Hates him. Enjoy.
Hey, what's going on, boss?
Oh, mate, yeah, good to see you. Really good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks again for having me on.
Alexis, that's it. I'm glad you brought the mug up.
There you go. It's actually Elvis. I got roped into going into the Graceland Museum, and I saw one with my wife's name on it, and not kidding, next to it was one with my name, and you never see Alexis. It's always Alexander and shit like that. So I was like, I gotta buy it.
It had to be done.
I don't even
what do you
like
mean
anything.
dragged?
I don't like anything Elvis has ever done.
And that's the first social clip right there. Bang, straight out the blogs.
Done.
Commercial comments. What do you mean you were dragged into
A buddy of mine
Graceland?
who's from your country, he's from England, never seen the South, and he wanted to go through he wanted to take a drive through the South, so we drove from New Orleans to, eventually stopped in Memphis, and then we stopped in Nashville, and then from Nashville we flew home. But he just wanted to see what Brits apparently watch a lot of American film and TV, and was like, "Do you guys really drink out of red plastic cups at parties? Do you guys is Mechanical Bull a real thing?" He had a lot of questions. So I said, "Let's just go to the South." And as a comedian, travel and time off are two things I do in abundance. So I said, "Fuck it, let's go." Yeah, can I curse? Sorry.
Yeah, of course, mate. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I've got that. I definitely can relate to the Red Cup thing. I spent a couple of weeks in DC a while ago now, maybe like 2011. This time of year in DC, it was blitz cold. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But I was taken under the wing of a couple of US-based colleagues, pre-drinks before a night out in what was it, Adams Morgan, I think, where all the dive bars are.
Okay, yeah.
Red Cups and shotguns, and it felt like I was in an episode of One Tree Hill or something.
Yeah.
I was like living a bit of a dream, but a little bit late.
Yeah, I've performed in England a bunch, and I remember after a show, someone interrupted the show. They said they had a question for me, but they wouldn't ask me until after the show, which, the whole audience was like, whoa. I was like, God, do I owe this guy money? What's going to happen? You know what I mean? And then I feared it was like something political, and I'm like, how do I explain to you I also hate them? I just happen to live there, And then afterwards, he was like, do you guys really take those yellow buses to school? And it was just, he was so enamored with the idea of these big yellow buses that kids take to school. It's like they exist. I never took one. I only took them to a football, American football practice or soccer practice, if you will, because they would be easy for buses. But I went to school outside of where I lived, a little bit further away. So my mom or the public bus would take me to school. So I was like, I never got to ride in one to school, but yes, they exist everywhere else. And he was just like, I thought that was just for film. He thought there was one bus that every television and film company borrowed,
On its last legs as well, paint peeling off of it, tires burnt to nubs. Yeah.
None of the seatbelts work. None of them.
There is definitely an aesthetic over there, though. I get it. I remember going over there. I'm not been over there maybe more than 5 times, different parts, and even a mail truck compared to, our vehicles. There's just something that's more pleasing on the eye than what we churn out over here.
See, it's funny because I think the opposite, because I grew up a huge fan of Group B style racing cars, the Sierra RS, the Ford Escort Cosworth is still my dream car, and they're so rare here. And I know they're also rare in Europe, but they're from you know what I mean? They're in Europe. You know what I mean? Those cars were never really sold here, at least not in large numbers. So I would always be so envious of the cars that you got in England outside of the steering wheel being in the wrong position, which I'm like, can't really use that here. You know, all of those things I was so envious of, like the stuff you guys had in England. And then come to find out, English people are like, you really got these huge islands in your kitchen? I'm like, why are you into this shit?
Yeah, your kitchens are as big as our houses.
Yeah, man, it
Sometimes,
turns out they are. I went to my buddy's place. I'm like, how'd you even get a couch in here? What, they built it in this room?
but you know what? I think you're actually the first comedian on here, and I'm so pleased that you are not a depressed one. You're bringing the energy already, and I really needed that this past week. So yeah,
Yeah,
great
buddy,
to
you should
see.
have seen me right before I hit the button on this thing. No, I'm kidding. You know, it's so funny. Like, I'll be in green rooms. You know, when you do a showcase shows like what they have in London, New York, major cities, typically like 6 to 7 comics in a show on a show, each doing 10 to 15 minutes. I'll be in the green room, and it's usually me and one other person like having a good time. Everyone else is just like sad sacks, and it's like, why do you do this to yourself? I get it. You know, some people's brain makeup don't allow them to be the other way, and hopefully they get that fixed. But in my head, I'm like, buddy, I don't know how much longer I got on this thing. I've eaten a lot of Doritos. You know what I mean? So I gotta enjoy my time.
Love that, love that. What are you eating when you go to a game? You're an Arsenal fan, right? I take it you've been to the Emirates.
Many times. I've actually been 18 times, and
Oh, really?
each time we've won. I've
That's more
never
than
been there
most British
for.
Arsenal fans I know.
Tell me about it.
Big-
And that's I love when someone's like, "You're plastic." I'm like, "Buddy, you don't understand how many miles I've logged." And do you know? Do you know how expensive it is for us to fly to England? And I grew up poor, and I'm a comedian. It took a while before I had any money to go there, and I've made my way there. Shouts to my wife who took me to my first game in like 2012. But yeah, for me, going to Arsenal games is the best, and for me, like, the atmosphere is the thing we can't connect to here in the States as much. That's why as much as I think some people dislike Arsenal fan TV, it gave us an idea of, like, who's in the stands, like, what's happening in the stands, like, what are the conversations being had that you won't hear on television, and you're not gonna you sometimes you see it on Twitter, but you don't know if it's real or not. And it was for me, it was like finding those cultural touch points is important. So like the first time I went, I was like, I got to go to a pub, right? I went to the Tollington. I was like, I got to get a pie. All these dudes be talking about pies, you know what I mean? I got to get a pie, you know, steak and ale pie or something. And I want that culture. And I think now what I found is like London is pretty much the other borough of New York. There's sister cities. There's such a multicultural food landscape. So when I go to Arsenal fans, there's Xi'an Bites, I believe it's called, or the noodle joint across the street, out of this world. Or I'll get things that aren't easy. I mean, I live in New York, so I could pretty much get anything, but the Jamaican food tastes a little different. We tend to focus a bit more heavily on the spices I can get from the Caribbean, and I think out there they focus more on like the overall flavor, like the way you could build it. So I'll let Jamaicans watching this argue as to who's more authentic. I just think it tastes a little different, and I love it. So I'll go to that. Was it the something jerk that's in that right on that roadway, walking towards the stadium from like the Nando's, whatever that strip is called, that street. I'll do something like that. But if I'm home, I don't eat anything because it's morning. I drink my coffee out of my stupid Elvis cup, and I sit there quietly, and I just think to myself, "How are we going to capitulate this season?" You know,
Yeah, it might already be happening, right? There's
buddy.
we've got 15 games to go.
The stress that I already feel, I hate this. Why do I do this to myself? My wife is like not a sports fan at all. She just doesn't understand it. At first, she thought it was fake, like wrestling. She's like, the Knicks. She's like the NBA wants the Knicks to lose. Like I'm like, stop it. That's not how it works. I'm like they're trying so hard. And they're so mediocre. And for her, she boiled it down one point. One, she's like, is there soccer just at all times every day? And I'm like, yeah, the whole world plays it. And I have one of those IPTVs. It's legal. I don't know what you're talking about, allegedly. And I just watch football at like literally all day, every day. It's just constantly on. I was watching the Uzbeki league, dude. I'm into it. You know what I mean? Like if balls are being kicked, I'm watching. You know what I mean? Unless it's a weird website that I'm not supposed to be on.
If you can think it, it's out there.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
exists
it's true.
somewhere, right?
That's a good point. And for me, my wife was just like, it's just 11 millionaires fighting another 11 millionaires to get a ball past the line. And I was like, why'd you
But
boil
when
it down to that?
that does that in some ways, though, that is kind of fun in a dystopian
Yeah.
kind of way, right?
As someone
Yeah,
who's poor, I'm like, great, rich people blood sport. Let's go. Let them
I
fight
want
it
to see
out.
some millionaires crying and holding their
Yeah.
shins.
Yeah.
It's
I
the
got
only
an
fun I can
idea.
get.
There's promotion to relegation, right? When teams are really bad and they finish at the bottom of the league, they drop down. How about if you're really bad at the sport, the fans get to split your salary? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
If you ain't up to snuff, we get the fee.
There's removal men hanging around outside their mansions, like 2 or 3 games before the end of the season, just
Yeah.
waiting for the call.
Just just a Mercedes Benz being towed out.
96-minute winner. Back off. Back off.
Mhm.
They did it. Back off.
I might cheer for Arsenal losing then if that's the case. I'm like, Daddy's getting a Rolex out of this? I'm in. Think about
So,
Tottenham fans would be the richest people on earth.
yeah, maybe they'd be a bit happier. They'd be a bit
Yeah.
pleased with it. Yeah, they hate themselves a little less. I think we support different teams, Alexis, but we've got a shared enemy in Tottenham Hotspur,
Nice. Are you Chelsea?
West Ham.
West Ham. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, West Ham are massive, right?
So they for about 18 months
You guys
and
had to get rid of
consecutively.
David Moyes, huh? You just had
Yeah,
to get rid of David Moyes.
he split opinion. I was quite happy with him, to be honest. For the first time in my life, or bar a year or two in the Championship, we were difficult to beat,
Yeah.
and that was a really new sensation for me.
Yeah.
Looking at a fixture list and seeing, oh, we're playing these guys, and maybe we'll nick that, rather than that's got 3 or 4 written all over it. There was a bit of hope. It ended in a trophy, which was great, but then these things don't last, and we can't have nice things. So we
Yeah.
have to find ourselves. I feel much more comfortable in a relegation scrap, if I'm honest. It
Yeah,
feels
dude, this
more.
is the thing. So there's a comedy club here called The Stand, which is gorgeous. If you ever get a chance to look it up, it's like it looks like a fancy restaurant. It's got a really cool bar, like a whiskey wall. It doesn't look like comedy should be happening there at all. It looks like, crypto meetings should be happening there. And they have two performance spaces, one downstairs, one upstairs. It's just a great place to perform because you're like comedians are never allowed in nice places. So this is cool. And the owner is a massive West Ham fan. He's originally from Sicily that grew up in New York. And he turned this tiny town in Sicily into West Ham fans because he had a bet with somebody else that they would win something. I forget how it works, but they have a march every year in Sicily, this tiny town of like 8 people. They have a West Ham march, and it's because he sends them flags and stuff. And I've brought Nigel Reo-Coker and Anton Ferdinand to his bar, to his restaurant and comedy club. And this guy's like this big, tough, Italian dude from New York. Bro, you bring a West Ham player, he turns into a little kid. It's so funny to see, like this guy who like it looks like he could muscle anyone out of any room or whatever. Just like the tough dude who doesn't respect anyone. You bring like a West Ham player, and he's like, "Huh, what was it like when you kicked the ball?" It's like so funny, and it's like
just
the
like
joy.
just
Yeah,
smelling his aftershave, and
holding the hug just a little too long.
yeah,
And it's like, it's so funny because you love these players, but the moment the players are gone, all West Ham fans do is complain about being West Ham fans. It's
yeah,
also, why would you in particular? He didn't choose, right? He lives in America. You pick whichever team you see first will win, basically. But you picked a team that their biggest rival, one of their more historic rivals, is Millwall. I want no smoke with Millwall fans. I want no
yeah.
beef
Oh,
with Millwall fans.
I've been a fan. I'm 40. I'm 42. I've been a fan for 5 years or something like that. I've been to one Millwall game by choice, having the experience of the first one in the bank. I'm like, I don't need to go to that anymore. That's fine. There were
Yeah, we're
just
good.
different people there. It was just like there's
Yeah.
unfamiliar, people that come out of the woodwork for that fixture looking for some kind of trouble. And I was like, yeah, I don't recognize a lot of these people. There's an energy about, and I don't think they care who they hit. And I'll
Yep.
probably just swerve. Yeah, I remember the first time they played each other in about 10 years. We got relegated, 2003, when we had like Joe Cole, uh, um, we had Canute, Di Canio, Carrick, all like great team, and we went down. And it was the first time we'd met Millwall in 10 years, and it was the most money spent on police for an English
Yeah.
football game in the history of the. Yeah,
And it probably still wasn't
line from
enough.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
Millwall
it runs
fans will
deep.
like fight. They'll fight the police horse. They're just insane, you know. The first
Yep.
Millwall match I ever saw on television, football wasn't readily available on TV here for a very long time. NBC brought the rights to the Premier League and kind of made it more cohesive. It used to be that you would have to pay if you were like a Juventus fan living in the US, you'd have to call and order the game. It was like 99 cents. So you'd pay like $1 or $2 to watch the game. It was pay-per-view. The same way I think it used to be like for wrestling and boxing. So if you were a dedicated fan or if you were a bar, you could definitely put it on. But if you were a fan of a team that maybe didn't have a lot of access, you'd be lucky if they showed it on tape delay. And for the English league, a lot of it was on tape delay. So you'd see it like 2 or 3 days later. I happened to have that channel on and I saw Millwall was playing and I didn't notice anything until I heard a lot of commotion and the announcers were sort of very disrespectful about what was going on or like very upset about what was going on. So I looked and there was a video of a guy fighting a group of police officers, like a group of fans pushing police officers. And one of the fans took the police hat and put it on and went back to the stands to watch the game. And as an American, I thought, well, here comes the SWAT team. This whole thing is getting shut down. They're shutting the league is going to go on hiatus for 2 weeks. As an American, it's like the police have guns. Like you don't see stuff like that very often. You typically would want to fight a police officer. There's also just a lot more police. And he watched the rest of the game. And then I think his buddy, the camera stayed on him. So his buddy gave him like a nudge and he took the hat off and he put it under his jacket. But like the camera's on you. It's like, you know what I mean? We're all watching. He finished watching the game. And I just said to myself, if the police are scared of Millwall fans, maybe I should be too. So I just,
Yeah.
no smoke with Millwall fans. You guys are good as far as I'm concerned, up the whatever, you know what I mean? No, thank you.
Yeah, don't drop a pin, don't tell them your address, just,
No. No?
keep it strictly at arm's length. No, nice bunch, loyal bunch.
Yeah,
We'll say that
for
much.
sure. Dedicated.
Well, so you're mentioning watching games on tape delay, which to me, uh, maybe gives a little bit of an insight into passion there, like watching it's like reading three-day-old news, right? So what's your route in to enjoying the game over there?
So I grew up in a city called Newark. We don't pronounce it that way. We say Newark. But when I say that, people think I'm mispronouncing North. So Newark is kind of a weird city. It was it's a lot like the Bronx, to be honest with you. And in fact, there's a lot of folks from the Bronx who moved to Newark and back and forth. The Bronx in particular and Newark in particular just had like a different immigration pattern than everyone else. Like it was a very heavily Caribbean, very heavily West African, very heavily Brazilian. In fact, the largest Brazilian population outside of Brazil, I think now is Orlando, but for a very long time it was Newark. A lot of Portuguese, a lot of Spanish. They had their own neighborhood where the Portuguese, Brazilians, and Spanish lived, and a lot of like the culture when I grew up was like wearing sambas and driving Jettas. It was like it felt a little European. It felt like a little like you don't really need to assimilate to America too much in Newark. And everyone played football. Everyone had a ball. Everyone played pickup at lunch or at recess. And it was very common. I don't know if you know the history. In fact, it's funny, I'm wearing the hat. For the first major World Cup that I remember was 1994, and most of the players came from Kearney, which
Same.
is the town just outside of Newark. So a lot of the people from Newark, because it's so dangerous, will move to the towns outside of it when they get a little bit of money, and that's why Kearney is the way it is. It had a massive Scottish immigration population, which taught everyone how to play the sport. And those boys became the players a lot of the players that made up the 94 team. So the whole area, Kearney is like Soccer City, USA, and like the whole area football is just like a thing. And I didn't realize that once you leave that, everyone's like, what is it? I have no idea what you're talking about. Like you literally could say Real Madrid to somebody in America and they'd be like, did you just have a stroke? Why are you mixing those words together? They just don't get it. And to me, it was like, well, what do you mean? Benfica's the biggest team in the world because there's parades every year that Benfica wins and they pretty much win every other year. I think they have like 36, 37 championships. So those types of things felt so normal to us. If we had a problem with somebody, or if like my group of friends had a problem with someone else, we would essentially like go to the cages like in England. What I mean? We'd play footy, and then at the end we'd all be friends. And we'd all walk around. And it wasn't until like you get older, like the gang stuff started and real problems started. But when you're young, football was just like a common thing. So if you go to like, especially Portuguese houses, like a lot of my friends parents worked in construction. So all these houses, they look like crap at the front. When you walk in, they're like palatial estates, and they would build these things called great rooms. Like everyone had it. It might be a thing from Portugal, but it was like big skylight, big attachment in your house. It's almost like a massive covered patio that's like an extension of your living room. And there'd always be a big screen TV, and it was like the dudes in there, all the grown Portuguese men and Brazilian men watching football on TV. And that's kind of what got me into watching it and understanding. And the moment I saw Thierry Henry, I was like, who's that guy like gliding past everyone? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not normal. Everyone else felt very brutish, you know? And this guy felt like he was on skates. And that's kind of what opened the doors for me to really start following the sport a lot more. And it was a love affair from that point. But I always had it in my heart as a kid because it was kind of commonplace for me. And when I would make friends from outside of where I grew up, I'd be like, oh, are you guys going to watch the Champions League? Or would not make Champions League, but like, are you going to watch the FA Cup? And they'd be like, the what? Like, they're like, we're Giants fans, we're Jets fans, we're Yankees fans. So I was like, I'm that too. But, you could add another sport to that. And it didn't click for a lot of people, but it always did for me.
Fascinating how there's like a this bubble. There's a bubble there with this enjoyment of a game, and it's on the streets, like you mentioned, pickup, and it's commonplace in people's houses, but outside of that, so alien.
Yeah.
It's just it's an incredible concept because
Yeah,
here
it
it's
was like in for the football landscape, it would be like America's like, like North Korea or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't permeate for some reason. And, probably not the comparison anybody wants me to make, but for some
too late.
reason the
We've got it
sport just
locked. It's too late.
yeah, yeah, that's definitely the clip you're gonna use. I know that. You're gonna get numbers on this, and I'm probably gonna be on the list. But uh, for some reason, it just doesn't permeate. And then because it's so popular so there's more youth people play the sport in America than any other country in the world. It's a very popular sport for kids. And there wasn't a future in it for very long. So it's like if you're gonna get a free ride in college, do it for baseball or American football or basketball because there's a future. Don't do it for soccer/football, right? So it's like it was a kid sport, and then the women were so good at it that a lot of like your more toxic men here would say, "Oh, this isn't a masculine sport," and it was like, "Bro, let me show you one Gattuso highlight, and I promise you, you'll think this is tougher than any other sport because you're barely wearing a pad on your shins. You know what I mean? Like this is such a tough sport, but for them, they never saw the adult version of it, so for them, it was like a girly sport. So that was like the rub against it for so long, where even if you were a fan of it you almost felt like you couldn't talk about it at a bar or you couldn't talk about it amongst your friends. I was always the opposite. And as a comedian, I dare you to try to mess with me. Like I dare you to try to joke with me because I guarantee you what I say back is going to hurt you way more. It's going to get a bigger laugh. So I was always ready for that. I always welcomed that. So for me, I was always very vocal about being a fan of the sport. And I turned a few heads, but there was a lot more who just couldn't care less.
Was that your role when you were younger as well? That kind of, you've obviously your profession as a comedian now. You've got that tool in you for the quick response, the kind of I guess the way of flipping it on its head.
Hmm.
Is this consistent with what it was like in the playground, so to speak, or on the street when you're playing with these kids?
Yeah, I heard a story of I want to say it was God, why can't I El Apache? He played for West Ham. Why can't I think of his name right now? He played for West Ham Man United. Striker, short, Argentinian, long hair. Not a great looking
Tevez,
guy. Tevez, Carlos
Carlos
Tevez. Thank
Tevez.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
El Apache. I remembered his
He's
nickname,
got a
but not.
special
Oh
place
no,
here.
I wanted him at Arsenal so bad. I think he's one of the greatest players of all time. But he told a story about like, he'd be young and he'd be like nutmegging drug dealers. And it's like, yeah, well, yeah, he grew up in a really bad place. I was the same way. I was never someone who had to like affiliate myself with one group or another. I was kind of everybody's friend, and that could sometimes also be a problem. And I always used humor as my way of like getting out of sticky situations and if I could make someone who's a pretty dangerous guy laugh at himself, or if I can poke fun at him and I could do it in a way where like he knows I'm doing it, but it's light enough where it doesn't like I was really good at finding that line. And it was, risky, but it was something that I always felt like was my instinct. If I could do that, then I think being on stage is the simplest thing in the world, you know. I don't think any of you are that dangerous. You're sitting here paying, you know, doing 2 drink minimums. To me, the stakes were so much higher where I was growing up, you know. So I was I was so more comfortable doing that it was harder for me to learn to like write jokes and do an act because I would go up on stage and my whole thing was like, you know, like the way an MMA fighter at a bar wants you to swing at him, you know, like okay, I know I can rip you apart, you know, and you're a drunk guy. I dare you to swing at me. I'm going to turn you into a pretzel. I was always that guy on stage. And it took a while for me to learn, like, maybe I don't have to turn this into a war zone with the audience. Maybe I can come up here and just be funny and have a good time. And then if that person does rise up, bop, I got that skill and I could go back to my set. So yeah, I would say I came at it from a different way, but from my youth, that's kind of where I developed these skills. And as my wife will always put it, because we've been together since we were teenagers, she's like, "You've always been that guy. You just needed to know what place accepts that guy, you know?" And you found the stage.
I like that. There's a kind of an argument for like we don't change. We are who we are, and
Uh-huh.
you just you find your lane. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I'm interested to know how it translated from like a reflex when you're growing up, and it's just a tool, like in the same way that some other kids might need to use their hands
Hmm.
to get out of a situation. You're using wit and speed of wit, but then when you're going into stand up, like you're not in that kind of. I'm not saying it's not a high pressure environment, but it's also not um, just life happening. You are going in there with um, an agenda, so to speak. So does it become more nerve wracking to use your skill in that sense?
You know, it's funny you say that because I was just having this conversation last night with someone was asking me what's it like to be a comic, which I think every comedian is tired of answering because it's like, I don't know how to explain it to you unless you try it. But what I was sort of explaining is like the pressure is not the same, which correlates to your question. The pressure's certainly not the same as it was when you're a kid and like that social clout, you know, your identity feels like it's always hanging in the balance. You know, like if you're the guy who's really good at sports, God forbid someone's faster than you. God forbid someone's taller than you. God forbid someone's stronger than you or can shoot a basketball better than you. And you feel like your identity is lost. And, you know, as you get older, like that doesn't matter as much. But the pressure trigger is still there because it took me a minute to figure it out. And when you're young, you do shows where like everyone in the audience is young and creative. And as you get better, you tend to go to clubs and clubs, you know, for the most part are also like young creatives. But then if you start doing like road gigs, these are people who have mortgages, who, you know, they got a babysitter to come out. They don't get to go out very often because they're, you know, maybe their parents or they have young kids and they put a lot of money on the line. They bought tickets, they're doing 2 drinks. There's a lot of pressure on this being a great night for them. And you know, maybe a lot of comics just go up and say, whatever, you paid to see me, so I'm going to do my act. I certainly do that as well. But I also keep in the back of my head of like, I know what that's like. I know, you know, early on, I worked in the corporate world and I made a lot of money, which was really cool. And then when I got into comedy, I wasn't making anywhere near as much money. Comedy is a very tough grind and you don't make a lot of money. And I remember, you know, like putting some of the little, you know, money I would get, you know, tips if I were when I used to do tours around the city and the little tips, I would put some stuff away so that I could take my wife out for a night just to kind of like remind her, like, you know, I'm still honoring you and, you know, I'm not just wasting my time here. And I remember the pressure of it, like, I hope the food's good. I hope she likes it. I hope the restaurant's nice. I hope the table's nice. Like everything had to be perfect because we don't get to do this very often. I remember that. So I kind of put that pressure in the back of my head. So yeah, it's not the same. Like, I don't think I'm gonna get beat up at the end of the night. And I don't think my friends are gonna think less of me or I'm gonna have to go and, you know, get a cool new haircut because I lost my identity. I think of it differently. I think of like, I know how much some of the people in the audience put into this being a great night. And I think that's why a lot of comics you'll see get very upset when someone heckles. It makes a great clip and it goes viral on the internet. But for the audience, it's like, bro, they didn't pay to hear you. They paid to hear me, you know? Let me do an act as opposed to, and now I have to eviscerate you because I want them to have a good time in this moment. And it's like, I don't want to be mean to you, dog. Sit down, you're drunk, you know, or get him out of the room. Like those moments, it's like, yo, a lot of people spend a lot of time and effort to be here and we should honor that. At least I try.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir, but you made me do this.
Yeah,
And I've got to,
yeah,
yeah,
really.
yeah,
There's one guy who made the you know, the slide whistle sound. Like
yeah.
a joke I said I wasn't at the punchline yet, but every joke has like laugh lines in it before you get to the real punch. And one of the laugh lines didn't hit. And I knew it didn't hit. Everyone knew it didn't hit. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, I don't care because I know the punchline's going to get him. But he made the woo, like the sound of a bomb in a cartoon. And I was just like, but now I don't wanna do this, but here we go. Like, now I'm gonna have to absolutely destroy this guy. And at the end of the night, the guy was outside smoking a cigarette, he was like, "Hey, man, you went really hard." And I was like, "You did that sound?" Like, I had to, you know what I mean? It wasn't for me, it was for the audience. You know, part of what they paid for is my ability to do that, and you're the one who popped your head up. It's whack-a-mole. There's a reason they gave me this mallet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I felt terrible, but I'm like, I gotta crush you, dude. You seem like a nice guy, and he was.
Oh man, but yeah, like you say, I mean, he's put himself up for the slaughter there, and he might think twice next time.
Yeah. Maybe keep the sounds to yourself next show.
Where in your journey does does the kind of desire to break from the corporate pathway come in, and how long did it take you? So just to add a bit of context to that question, I've had 100 guests on so far,
Congrats.
and the common thank you. The common thread through every single person is either a dedication to following their heart and or a willingness to take a risk and in a bid to kind of achieve something greater than what it is they're doing at that moment. And
Yeah, I would it's a great way to put it, right? Because I don't know that I had that. I don't know if I looked at it and said, "There's something bigger at hand." I didn't know if it was that. I think it was for me, it was probably like a little bit of just a tiny bit of selfishness of saying like, you know, can I translate? Because being funny and being a good comedian are two different things, you know? Like, you could probably be a great shooter of the basketball, and there's a guy who's like, I forget his name on the internet, who could shoot, like, through anything at any point from any distance. But can you be a great basketball player in the NBA? That's like it's a very different question, you know? You have one of the skills, but there's so much that goes into being that, and dedication, heart, and luck, and all those things. Part of me was wondering, can I convert this into stand up? And there was a little bit of risk, right? Everyone kind of that I know thinks I'm funny. And what if I do this and I suck at it? That means I'm not actually that funny, you know? There was some risk, but I think a lot of it came from the confidence my wife had in me to start. And she was like, go try it. You know, I got laid off from a corporate job. And, you know, if, at that point, I had negotiated a pretty long severance and I was kind of sitting back, just sort of trying to figure out like who am I? I've been working since I was 11 years old. When I was 11 years old, I got a job in a factory just to like, you know, my family didn't have a lot of money and I wanted nicer clothes, so I had to go make my own way. And I kind of understood myself as I was the guy who worked hard and had a good time and laughed. And you know, I didn't need to do that. I worked 7 days a week through high school and college, maybe now I'm suddenly sitting here and I'm being paid to stay home and I kind of didn't really know what to do with myself. So part of it was probably my wife trying to preserve my mental health, saying, go do stand up. You have this long severance package. And the other part of it was like, yeah, you're right. I am going to go do it and I'm just going to have fun. As you go, you realize like, oh, this isn't going to replace the corporate money right away. And, you know, I need to do other stuff. And that's I think where that mindset clicked in for me, where I was like, I can see a pathway where there's some success here. And I don't know what it's gonna look like, but I can see myself being a part of this crew, you know, this group and this community. And if they like me and they respect me and I'm doing the same thing they're doing, and it feels like a competition, but it's not really, but there's still competitiveness to it. And they're still liking me and they're still giving me opportunities and booking me on their shows. Maybe I do belong in this community and maybe I don't need to run back to the other thing. And it was also this idea of like when you grow up with no money, the way I've been able to explain it to my friends who grew up with me was like, imagine you have a basement and there's water pouring into your basement, and you look down and the biggest hole you see says money on the top. So you think, if I plug that hole, I'll be able to handle this. And then when you do, you realize that there's 1,000 other holes pouring out water and fulfillment, enjoyment, you know, self-respect. There's all these other things that I didn't realize until someone handed me a bunch of money that it didn't solve all my problems and it didn't make me feel better. It just provided me more money and it provided me the opportunity to go buy things and go do things. And everyone says money doesn't make you happy. I mean, it may. For some people, it might, you know, but for me, it didn't. Um, I wanted to find a way to make money while doing something I enjoyed. And, we don't have free healthcare here and stuff. So you kind of have to constantly be churning money just to survive in this country, especially in a city like New York. So I put myself, what got me to that point in corporate America where I was promoted to, regional vice president at 24 years old. Can I convert that to comedy? Can I take that work ethic and the toughness that my family put in me to never give up, never stop, just keep going, just keep working. Something will you'll figure it out, and no's are just getting closer to a yes. And can I convert that to comedy where a lot of people get into comedy because they're, aloof and creative and, they're very mysterious and cool and eccentric, but they never slugged it out in a factory when they were 11 years old, trying to be better than someone who has kids in a car and keep your job when they're doing redundancies, as they call it at your end, or layoffs. Mine, and, here I am, a 14-year-old kid trying to work harder to not get laid off. Why do I have that pressure? You know what I mean? But I understood that from a young age. So, like, can I convert that to comedy? And look, you get a little lazy when it's something that you don't have people watching you or a boss, and then you figure out like, oh, I need to get a little bit harder at it. So for me, I feel like I did that more than I sort of followed this like, you know, this sort of idea or ideal life or heart. I had all those things, but for me, it came from a much more pragmatic point of view, which is when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was stand up. I learned English because of stand up. There's a channel here called Comedy Central that would constantly show clips of stand up, similar to what like most people's TikTok algorithm looks like now. And I would just leave it on. And I didn't learn English till I was about 9 years old. But when I started learning English, I was like, wait a minute, why are these people using it in a different way? They're using words in a different way and they're getting laughs. And to me, there's something it attracted me like a magnet. And, people in my family were really funny. And I always adored that and looked up to them. So I'm like, clearly this is what I want to do is make people laugh. And I did it all through school. I got in trouble in every class. Teachers would move me closer to them and away from everyone. And then I'd make the teacher laugh so much, they moved me to the corner, farther away from them. And I was constantly getting told I talk too much and I disrupt class and I'm too funny. And for me, like, this thing I've always kind of wanted to do or always felt was like something I could provide the world, right? Like, can I do this in a way where I can make money, or is it just going to be for my group of friends? And eventually, I found a way to take football and to make it a part of my life and make it a part of my career and use that to continuously keep me in comedy and get better at comedy and build out my contact list there and find a way to build more of a career in it. And it's weird that it's kind of worked that I took two of my like four passions in life and found a way to kind of have them work harmoniously together. Look, it might not be for everyone, and I didn't have like this like I didn't like, an angel didn't tell me go do stand up, when I was a kid. Like I just did it, you know what I mean? Like I didn't have this like
Yeah, yeah.
vision.
It's obviously something that's felt quite aligned to though, I guess, right? And it's
Yeah, it's always felt like who I am. Like even in the corporate world, I was the guy who like made an all now off color is a weird part, but in the corporate world, I would say things that like you typically don't hear corporate people saying. It would get a laugh and it made me great at sales, but I always felt like I'm in the wrong space for who I am. Like playing bowling with the bumpers on. It kind of felt like I need more elbow room. I want to be myself more. And comedy provided that.
do you notice yourself feeling like happy is a, I don't know, quite a modern, wanting to be happy feels like a bit of a modern construct, but the do you feel the benefits of the line you're in now versus where you were? Even though like the kind of the monetary side of things is different and it's more of a slog, but even though you're accustomed to that, do you feel like, yeah, this is, the bigger picture, you've got the enjoyment, fulfillment holes have started to plug that you mentioned?
Yeah, I would say like, everything involves compromise, right? Like you can't have it all. So for me, it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice, right? Like when you get into something like stand up, you basically are saying like, I'm going to say no to 9 out of 10 wedding invitations I'm going to get. I'm not going to go to most of my family's birthday parties and stuff because I'm going to be on the road performing. I'm going to miss a lot of stuff. So like, there's a lot of parts of it that like are unfortunate where and 99% of the world, at least in my life, works in some type of more structured life. So they all have off the same holidays and they all have off the same, days of the week and I'm like, I'm at night, I'm performing at night. So like, My wife, who's a nurse, I got to find time to spend time with her because at night I'm on stage, and maybe she'll come out and hang out and maybe we'll go out after the show. But I could stay up till 4 in the morning without a problem. She can't, she's got to go take care of patients. And, people not dying is an important part of her job. So she can't walk in there a little hungover. So, like, whereas I could do whatever I want. I could go on a podcast if I'm a little hungover and I'll be funny. So it's okay. Like, my life is different than everyone else's. So sometimes you feel like a little bit of an odd duck, but the inner peace you feel when you're at least following, and I have friends that are New York is big for side hustles. Everyone has like two things, right? Like they're a lawyer and at night they're whatever, a dominatrix or something, right? Like everyone has like a second thing they do.
I thought you were
Whatever.
going to
I
say
don't I
something like
don't
they've got a
judge.
pop up chicken wing
Yeah.
business or something, but you went
Also that,
dominatrix.
right? No, but maybe you're a dominatrix with a pop-up chicken wing spot, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
First of all, great idea. Let me tell you right now. Um, I'd go there. I'd buy the wings, right? I think it's a great idea. So maybe you trademark that. But
Yeah,
whatever,
you
you have
go
like a
for the
second
wings, you
thing.
stay for the
Yeah,
stings, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my God, that's great. That's gold. So whatever. It's like lawyers, but I'm a writer and I want to, create cartoons. Everyone in New York has a second thing, right? You don't come to New York unless you have a passion that you're following. It's too expensive here, right? You go somewhere else. You go live on the beach if you want to relax. And I think everyone has that. As long as you're following your passion, I think you feel that little bit of sense of fulfillment. So for me, I have that. I feel like I've scratched that itch, or I'm continuously scratching that itch because I don't think the itch dies. My driving determination now has changed from I need to express myself to I want to I want to do bigger venues. I want to draw a bigger fan base. I want to perform across Europe, not just the UK. I want to go I want to travel the world. I want my wife to be able to come with me. I want her to not have to work, as a nurse. I want all those things. So like the goals start to change, but like fulfillment is like this sort of you feel like, when you get off stage or when a new joke works, there's a dopamine hit in your brain that just, I don't know. I've never done drugs, but I'm assuming that's why someone gets addicted to drugs because the dopamine hit is just so intense. I'm addicted to being on stage. I love it. It's when I'm most comfortable. I love being a part of it. And for me, it's like I could go back if I had to, but it's like I'm dedicated to finding a way to not have to. Like survival is the first part, and then like affluence comes after that.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned you're using two of your four passions. Second one, I'm assuming we're talking about football.
Yeah, of course.
At what point does that start to come into the picture?
I had a great. There's something called hip pocketing that agents do, which is like if agent thinks like an agent when they sign you, they're committing to the agency that this person's going to bring in money, right? So like I was very early in my comedy career. I don't think this agent saw me and said, "Oh, this guy's immediately going to bring in money." But they do something called hip pocketing, which is where they'll help you out, they'll send you on auditions, and they'll get coffee with you, and it's like let me see if they can turn this into like something that's income producing, and then I'll sign them. You know what I mean? Can I see their potential and then I'll sign them? But for right now, it's sort of like testing. It's like bringing a player in on loan or a trial, to train for 2 weeks from another country. Which a lot of Americans, do in the Premier League. A lot of American players will go and they'll trial and they'll come back and they go, "Oh, that was so cool. I got to train with like, United or City or Arsenal." And, it's like, but they didn't sign you. That's kind of hip pocketing. So this agent was doing that to me and he was trying to figure out like, how do I make this guy more marketable than just you're a funny guy on stage? And he asked me a question that I think unlocked everything, which is, what are you known for? And I was what do you mean? What am I known for? I'm a funny guy. I'm fat. I'm American. I talk about being married. I'm like giving him all the things. And he's like, that's every comedian has a shtick, right? That's your shtick. That's like what you're known for. Like, what would have to happen in front of one of your best friends that they would be like, oh, Alexis knows about this, or Alexis should know about this, or Alexis could answer this question. Like, you'd be the first person they think of. And he's like, not stand up. It's something else. I was like, oh, probably soccer or food, maybe business advice. And he was like, soccer and food, that's who you are. He's like, you're on stage from 7 o'clock on every night. From midnight to 7 p.m., you need to work on something in food and soccer. Go figure out how to go be a part of that community. And he just, pushed me out into the ocean with no oars. It was just like, go figure it out. And I ended up getting 2 pilots on the Food Network here, which neither one of them got greenlit, but, I started the process, started putting together, the presentations of what I wanted, go talk to chefs. I ended up doing food tours, which, helped me survive in the city for a very long time. And I met a lot of people in the restaurant world. And as far as soccer was concerned, I tried to find another comedian to start a podcast because I feel like there's a lot of personalities involved in the sport in the UK and really every country in the world. Where and in the US, there really weren't. There were a lot of people who played the sport previously, who knew how to talk about it from a way that people from other countries would respect. And that's very essential. And it's important to them that a lot of Americans in the sport feel they need the validation from someone with a British accent or someone with a Spanish accent to accept them, which is fine. And I wanted to do the exact opposite. I was like, how do I annoy all of them, but make Americans who are in the same journey with me laugh? And that's kind of what started the idea for Cooligans. And I found Christian Polanco, who's another comic who also loved the sport and wanted to dedicate himself to, a video and podcast series. And it was like the perfect timing for both of us. That's kind of how I got myself in that. And then the food stuff kind of went a little bit by the wayside, but I just launched a new YouTube channel and I might be doing some food content on there. So, because the football kind of became so popular, it took over. But that was the question that kind of opened the doors for me. And I've not told a lot of people that, but I've told some close friends that are comics that question, who I see be funny on stage, but don't have like a direction. There's not something about them that's like easily, what kind of comic is he? I'm like, I don't know. They're funny. Like that's the first idea to me. I'm like, I should probably tell them, ask them this question. And I've seen some comics just go through existential crises trying to answer that question. It's hard, right? It's hard to figure out for yourself what is it that you're known for. But that question opened the doors for me to be like, oh, I don't just have to be a comic. I can be a comic who also does blank. And that opened so many doors for me to be in other content, other things, and prepared me for stuff like this, where you're doing a podcast that's not about a specific thing. It's not just about me being a comedian, because I have so many other pieces to my uh, repertoire, if you will.
Is that quite a liberating experience when you saw those doors open?
It could. It could be. Sometimes it could also feel limiting if you don't like what that answer is, and that's happened to a lot of other comics. I just happen to have other passions, other things that I've spent way too much time thinking about. And, for me, it was always important to like understand the tactics I was watching. I think that I love the idea of like trying to define the undefinable, like figuring out how something that feels invariable to everyone else works. So like XG and stuff like that, I'm like such a huge fan of just the idea of like chasing, trying to figure, like baseball is very much like this, right? Like, what was the last type of pitch this player threw when it was cold weather in November, this inning, this many outs, down this much, this time of the season? Like, humans are repetitive, right? We repeat things that we're comfortable with. So it's like those things kind of work. So for me, like, I found a joy and I found a comfort in like being involved in the world and knowing that it kind of still scratched an itch I had and I can find a way to do it. But like if the answer I got back was something that I'm like, I don't want to do that. If it was just business because that's all people knew of me, I'd be like, man, I got to get out there and tell people more about who I am. And I think that's the way that I've tried to help some of my friends with that question is like, well, then go do something of the thing you're passionate about. Show the world who you are. And that's such a big thing for comedians. That's a big thing for content creators and stuff now, where, when I started stand up in 2009, the way you got big was you build a pitch about who you were and you went to networks and tried to sell a TV show, right? Now we have phones. You show the world who you are. Go make that content, go prove to the world, whatever. You're a really good blacksmith, buddy. Get on there. Make some fences. You know what I mean? Do the thing you're good at. Do you have a lot of latex and whips and you want to make chicken wings? Buddy, start a TikTok. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And make a couple pop-ups. And the world sees you now as who you are. And then you can maybe venture down that road a little bit further. So it does create some comfort, but that's maybe just a personal experience for me. For other people, I've seen them go through like real crises where they can barely perform for the next week because their heads are so locked into the spiral of like, oh my god, what am I known for, and why? What am I going to do? And everybody calm down. Like you can create that future for yourself.
I can understand how they get to that point because you can, I guess you can, like, going back to your point about wanting to know when the last pitch in these conditions, et cetera. I think we the royal we tend to look for the patterns because it means we equate to something like whatever that number that comes out of the kind of the research that you do. It means, okay, that's what I am. I am a person that returns XYZ because we're looking for some sort of meaning. Right? So yeah, as soon as somebody says, "What is it that you do or that you are good at?" and you can't think of something, you're like, "Well, yeah, what am I then?" And
Yeah.
like, what? Yeah, who am I? What am I? And I can see how that can can send a person the wrong
I've
way,
seen it.
even
It
even if
happened to
it's for a
me.
short time.
It happened to me. I remember when I was in the corporate world, I knew I wanted to do more. I was in office supply sales, the exciting world of office supply sales. And I went to a concert with my wife, and I lied my way into the VIP section. I told them I worked for Viacom and my boss was upstairs and I was going to get fired if I didn't get up there. And I bought the wrong tickets and he's talking to my clients. And the security guard was like, all right, chill, 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 go. Don't get fired, you know? So my wife and I got upstairs to VIP. It was cool. There was like free food hanging out. And eventually one of the acts came out and was like hanging out with us in our area. And I was like, oh my God. And I know what you do. I just saw this guy on stage, you know? He was like, I'm
Elvis,
making, yeah, yeah, buddy, I got your cup. I thought you were dead. It's true, you're not. And we're talking, I'm making everyone laugh. And he was like, oh man, what do you do, bro? You got to be in entertainment. And I was just like, I'm an office supply salesman. It was just like the dread of saying that out loud was like, well, I don't want to be that ever again in a conversation. So that kind of had already been in my head, and I didn't put it all together until I got asked that question, and then I asked other people, and I saw their reactions. But I was in that situation once before, and I didn't immediately go do stand up after that. I stayed with it, and I became a regional vice president. And I found pride in what I was able to supply for me and my family. But in that moment, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that guy who's got the corny corporate job. I want to do something more fun, but I didn't know what that was yet. And eventually my life got to that point, but I had that moment too.
yeah, especially when somebody assumes that of you, right? Assumes that you are something other than what you're about to tell them, and oh, you
Mhm.
you think that I could do that, and there's validation in that that maybe plants a little seed of confidence. It
Yeah.
might take some time to grow, but it's planted in it that yeah, I can go off and do something other than what I'm
But his
doing.
reaction of like, oh, we need those guys too. Nah, you're important. It's like, bro, don't. The pity was like, I was like, oh, I never want to be that
It's
guy
okay. It's
again.
okay. Fine. Just go over there. It's
Oh,
fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just like, dude, it feels like, you're sleeping with a girl for the first time and you finish before you start. You're like, all right, I don't, no, don't give me the pity. Just don't make no eye contact with me and let me leave,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
just don't tell anyone.
Yeah. That's never
Don't
happened to
tell
me before, by
anyone.
the way. I've been with
No,
my
no, no.
lady
It's
for a
just
very long time.
it's
Other
just something I've
people.
read about. Just read about it
Yeah, dude.
happening
I heard
somewhere
horror
on the
stories
internet.
of it. I would never, you
Sounds
know?
terrible. Sounds terrible. Poor guys. So Cooligans is up and running, and that starts to kind of gather steam. But what are you thinking then? Where you've been told to kind of go and find something, so you do it, and then it's very good. So
Yeah.
what was the reaction to that?
It's a scary moment because that's when you like, I tend to
This is
start things
easy.
with like, yeah, I was like, all I needed was a microphone on in my kitchen island, and this is crazy. I remember like we started it with like, let's look at the competition, and it was just like, these very suburban, dry shows with like stats, and they had fan bases. So I'm like, all right, that part of the fan base is supplied, but there's nothing that sounds like us, and we're gonna be better than the people that are trying to be like us, and this they don't know how to make cool videos and they don't know how to do this and we're going to do it and we're going to be better than everyone else. And then when you start, you're like, oh my God, it's working, And like, I remember the next time I went to a match with Christian after we did like a couple episodes, I think it was a international break when we started, if I'm not mistaken. We went to go see a New York City FC game and somebody yelled, Cooligans. And I was like, I remember somebody was talking to me and they were like, hey, how's your wife's knee? And I was like, what are you trying to say? Like, how do you know my wife? Like, yeah, exactly. I was just
What the
like,
fuck you say?
Christian saw the look in my face turn, and Christian looked at me and he like said it. He goes, "Yo, you talked about it on the show," and I was like, "Oh, I talked about it on the show. I had not experienced that. Like, I forget I'm in people's ears. I was just ready to be like,
Just
what?
smoothing out his shirt. She's fine,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Sorry
I'm
about the
really
just
sorry." I'll get you new french fries, I promise. I was just like ready for war in that moment. And I think once you start, you're like, oh, okay, now we need some of those people that we were like, we're gonna be better than you. We're like, hey, how do you do this? Because we've started and now we're like, again, we're down this river and we don't know where we're headed, but you guys do. Could you tell us what this is like? And a lot of the people that were like, we're gonna be better than them are like our best friends, when you start something like that, the whole reason we did Cooligans was like, we're going to build a fan base. They're going to come see us perform stand up. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that the career would be reversed. My stand up would be the supplemental part of it. You know what I mean? Like, I would start this career and it would become my career. And, you end up on CBS. When CBS called me, I was like, I think you called the wrong person. Like, you don't want me on television, dude. Like, my whole role is like, I'm like the anti-TV guy. Like I've said so many things on the podcast and we're pretty brand safe. We've never pushed the envelope too far. I'm not a shock, kind of guy. I hate taking the contrarian part, but like, I've done 20 minutes on my hemorrhoid on a soccer podcast. Like, are you
And I'll
sure
do
that's
20 more.
yeah. I'm like, you sure you want to put me on live television? Because no one else in the room knew I was going to do that. I want you to know that. I wanted to do it. You sure you want me on TV? And it was crazy that this little, my agent asked me one question and me finding someone else who wanted to do a podcast started a journey where I would end up on live television 5 days a week. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is mad. I wonder what people would have been thinking from your previous life where they're like, I know that guy. And
Yeah,
he did the thing.
I've met a few of the people that I hired and fired, who were like, I can't believe you're on television, but also, dude, you were never the right guy for corporate. Like everyone's been like, I can't believe you survived corporate as long as you did. I said some dumb shit in my time. I've said some really dumb stuff in meetings, but it works in sales because you stand out. But everywhere else, it's like you're not built for a conference.
So what's the feeling like when the CBS call comes in and that kind of elevates it to an even higher level?
I think in
Like
a
you're really
way,
on.
even though yeah, I mean, in a way, I think it's even though I never chased the validation of like people who are more entrenched in the sport, and because we speak English, England probably is the place most people think of, and probably top of the list. I never really chased that validation. I've always been like, I'm kind of proud of the culture we built here. Like we see the comments all the time of like, oh, it's called football, not soccer. Yeah, where you're from. And also you're the reason we call it soccer. The British told us that was the name. If you told me your name's Steve, I'm gonna call you Steve. You know what I mean? I don't know when you go back and you change it. You're Sting now? You want me to call you Sting? It's ridiculous. So for me, I never chased that validation. I always thought it was funnier to face it and to go further, and dig the trench deeper, if you will. So when you start getting validation from the industry, you're just like, oh my God. Like the realization for me was more like this thing I thought was gonna be like the edgy, fun, the second podcast you listen to about, the weekend. I always felt like we don't wanna be bigger or better than the other ones. At first we did, but we want you to have your stats because we don't wanna have to talk about stats. Can we just have fun? And to find out that the people who wanna talk about stats now want me to do that was like kind of shocking. And there was a sense of validation in that. And like, oh, okay, this journey that I went on that I promised my wife was gonna be something kind of turned into something. And I always had the vision and I always had the drive, but for it to actually happen was kind of wild. And then you find out maybe this isn't exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. Excuse me, that you kind of you you just get on with it and it gets you where you want it to go without kind of focusing too much on the destination. You end up there anyway, you know. But then
Yeah.
I guess you're just moving that finish line down the road a bit more and always, like you say, just trying to push it a little bit more and seeing what's next. Um I guess like it'd be remiss not to mention the World Cup and how you feel about that coming back. You've got your first World Cup was in the US. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's a lovely full circle moment. You've now, I guess very different from '94. You are a a prominent figure in the space rather than a kid and
Yeah.
enjoying it on TV. And I don't know what feelings of nostalgia or what you if you have a little conversation with little Alexis from time to time. But yeah, how do you feel about where you're at now and with the World Cup coming back and what your role in it would be.
The first professional game I ever saw played was Italy versus Ireland in the '94 World Cup, which at the end of it, everybody was like really sad and putting on the radios because turns out there was like a pretty bad bombing back in Ireland. But um,
Yeah, Ray Houghton scored the winner.
yeah, dude, I
Yeah, yeah,
was
remember the yeah.
I was just looking around like, man, there's a lot of Italian and Irish people here. Like, this is crazy. I grew up around mostly Latinos. I'm like, where have you all been hiding? I never saw passion like that ever. You go to a Giants or Jets games, it's a lot of people booing or cheering, but I've never seen this sort of collection of people proud to do something. So I remember I just like I want to be more involved in this sport because why are people not rooting for it as much as I am? And I loved it. So to go back full circle to that now, like be involved in the industry and people are gonna get their World Cup experience through me. Some people, whether it's the stuff we have planned for after the matches or a watch party that we're hosting, stuff like that. Like I'm involved in them taking in the world. It's crazy to think about it, and I think when it happens, a lot of the stuff starts to feel very second nature, like hosting events. Like I hosted the US draw, the World Cup draw party. They only did one event in DC and one party in Times Square. And I hosted the Times Square event. I was just like, I'm a part of the world. Like the US soccer thought it was a good idea to involve me in there. Like this is nuts to me. And part of it is it feels like my heritage, right? I grew up
Hemorrhoids chat
around
really
Buddy,
resonated with
I
the
think
right
it sealed
people,
the deal,
Yeah.
what a painful thing to go through, but if it brought me all this joy, then it was worth it, but, um, let's get more back there, I think, if I look at my region's history, right, most of the '94 team came from my region, and now I wasn't good enough to be a player, and I'm not smart enough to be a coach, although I might be, but I definitely don't wanna spend my time doing that, um but I found a way to involve myself in the sport, and now I'm a part of it. Like the heritage of my region continues in a different way. And so many people have started podcasts and stuff. They're like, "You guys opened the door for us," which I was like, "I love that." I wanted more people like me to do it. But to think I'm going to be involved in this thing, it's like, look, I wish the country was in a better place, and I wish people weren't talking about banning it. And I wish I didn't have to apologize for those things because I'm like, I had nothing to do with it, literally nothing. I got no blood on my hands, bro. I've been trying to tell y'all this was a bad idea from the beginning. So for me, it's like I hate the dark cloud that's over it right now. And maybe there was a '94 and I didn't know because I was a little kid, but um
Yeah.
I wish that didn't exist. I wish I didn't have to be like the World Cup. And then most of my friends who know nothing about the sport are like, is it gonna happen? I'm like, ugh, I hate that. Yeah. I'll only be another
That's my
minute.
boss.
I don't know if they can hear you. I wish that part wasn't a part of it, but like I haven't really had the conversation with little Alexis yet. But like my wife brought it up the other day. She's like, "Isn't it crazy that like the whole world cares about this event and you're going to be a part of it?" And I was like, "Oh my god, hit me with
Yeah,
like a
all of a
ton of
sudden the head's
bricks."
gone. Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like,
wait a minute.
"I'm
I
so
can't do this.
important. Maybe you should be talking me through an assistant." You know what I mean, wife? Don't make eye contact with me, dude. Do you know who I am? It's crazy. It's wild, but it's like I've also put in a lot of hard work to hopefully be even a small part of it. So that's kind of my goal right now is to be involved in it in a somewhat of a meaningful way. And if that were to happen, dude, I'd be the happiest dude on earth, man.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place to end up, and it feels like quite a neat place to end up given where your journey started, and I think it feels like a bit of a pinnacle moment. So I'm curious to know if you've got one eye on the other side of the World Cup and what the future looks like for you in terms of projects you'd like itches you want to scratch, or where you want to take Cooligans, where you want to take yourself. Bigger venues aside in stand up, but in the football space, kind of what do you see?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that's been something I've been thinking about for the last like maybe 18 months is what does my life look like on the other side of it? And, right now it's more me thinking like, what do I want it to look like? And I would love to, I've been doing a podcast for 10 years. This is very, it's our 10th anniversary. It's simple, right? Like we kind of understand how to do it. Um, you know, the I want to find a way to maybe like help the next group of Cooligans. Like, who are the young guys that are they're doing it that just don't have the direction, but they have the drive. Can I help them a little bit? Can I piece together some more interesting things for Cooligans to do? Like, we went to Goodison Park. That was cool. Like, we're financially in a different place than we were then, where we were like trying to find brands to help us travel. Like, we can do it on our own now, and some of those things like explore the world. And personally, and if Christian doesn't want to do that, he just had a kid. I can totally understand if he can't do that. Then I'm more than happy to do that, because like I think what one of the most important things is like, I always feel like I'm a fish out of water, and I think that's always the funniest thing. Larry David has proven that can be comedy gold, and I think me in England is so funny. And the first time I was like, "Wait, you just put bacon on bread and you call that a sandwich?" Like, what I mean, where's the rest of it? Like me
You know,
having,
you can
I'm
put
like,
more bacon in though. You can just keep putting more and more
there's
bacon.
more than one ingredient makes a sandwich, dude. You're not, it's not a sandwich. And they're like, well, put brown sauce on it. I'm like, you shouldn't have to put condiments on something to make it a sandwich. You know, yeah. I get that this upsets you. And I'm like, where did the term bat come from? That's not a thing. Like those types of things, like me seeing those for the first time, all of my British friends are like, dude, this is hilarious because this is commonplace for us. I've yet to
Now,
have beans on toast.
I beg you to get yourself to Wigan in the north of England,
Is
and
that where they put the pie between the 2 pieces of bread?
the Wigan kebab. Yes, sir, that's the
Oh,
one.
yeah. I gotta
Yeah,
try this. So
yeah,
that's like my goal is like, please introduce me to the most mundane British cuisine, and just like the culture is so different than ours, like, you know, who was it? It was the guy from Oasis who was like, "You've wasted your time. There's no reason to go to a pub for just 1 pint." And it's like, that is very common for that's like, I'll be like, I'll go out for one and I'll just have one. And my friends are like, I'll just have one drink. And then we kind of hang out and we go home. And the British idea of like, if you're going to go to a pub, it's the night and go out on the piss, and you're going to wake up the next morning feeling like absolute dog shit. But that's like part of it. If you don't
yeah.
feel like dog shit, you
So,
didn't have enough fun. And it's like that whole idea. I'm like, I just want to try it. You know what I mean? I want to see what life is like out there. I want to go to one of these small grounds and go see like a Dagenham and Red, a Dagen Red match or something. Or, you
yeah,
know,
that's
uh,
my hometown club. You
there you
mentioned there,
go. Pulled that out
Dagenham
of
Redbridge.
nowhere.
Yeah,
Yeah. I want to
yeah.
go see that. I
Right,
want to
we'll
go
get you
see
to one
what,
of those
yeah, let me
next
go
time
see
you're
what
over.
like
It'd
a
be great
lower
to get you to one of
league.
those.
What's a lower league match like? I've never even seen rugby played before. Let me go to Wigan. I'll go watch rugby. I know it's popular there. Like that kind of stuff. Like I want to go experience those things as like a loud New Yorker. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, what's that like when you drop me? And it's funny, my buddy, we went on a Bundesliga trip with a bunch of other media folks, and one of my friends is from England, who lives in Hamburg, Germany now. And I said, like, I don't think of myself. I'm more of a New Yorker. I'm not that American. He started laughing. He's like, bro, you're very American. I'm like, how am I American? Like, for me, an American's like NASCAR fan, from the Midwest or the South. I feel like more of a New
cowboy
Yorker. And
boots.
he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm not that at all. And he was like, the moment you landed in Germany, you were the loudest person in Germany. And I was like, okay, that is true. That's, I've seen the stairs.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
other than that,
yeah.
what was giving it away? Yeah,
Yeah, maybe the fact he said I wore a large pink jumper. I'm like, it was cool. you know?
American flag tie.
Yeah.
Yeah, with all like the sponsors. Yeah, like
Complaining
Wayne's
about the
World with
food.
the branded up to the eyeballs.
Yep. Everything Coca-Cola in the next scene or Pepsi.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I want to see what is it like? I've been to Dortmund and they think I'm absolutely out of my mind. I've been to Werder Bremen and they think I'm out of my mind. It's like, I want to be in more of those rooms. I want to pitch ideas to people who run clubs because they think every one of my ideas are absolutely insane. I'm like, this is so commonplace in America. In America, it'd be like the injury break, brought to you by Coca Cola. Like that's a normal, and it's
yeah,
crazy to footy fans around the world. It's like, we would never. It's like, we'll try it, make more money, like those types of things. I would love to see that. I would love to be a part of that type of content be made and just have more fun than just. I've proven to the world I can talk about the sport now, even on television, a level I didn't think I'd reach, but now I've proved it. It's like, all right, well, now what do I want to do with this, newfound freedom? I don't just want to get back on TV. Let's go have fun.
yeah. That's a great attitude, and definitely makes me quite excited to see what direction that goes in. And I think what you said earlier on really hit home. What do you want the next stage to look like, suggesting that you can just make that happen. And I think that's something that I definitely forget that, it's maybe an idea of something, but then don't really break it down into practical steps. And that's all this is, right?
Hmm.
You can make it what you want to be. And that's a perfect time for me to be hearing this with a business of my own opening in the next sort of 8 weeks or so,
Let's
which is the result
go.
of all these. Yeah, the result of all these conversations over the past couple of years got me to that point where I kind of um, finally you know, put my money where my mouth is, so to speak. Yeah, it's just like perfect timing to hear that kind of attitude, rather than this kind of fear state that's creeping in because it's a big step and a new step. But it's like, yeah, it can be what I want it to be.
Yeah.
It's not going to be anything. You can let it happen to you, and you're in choppy waters. But if you just kind of grab it by the balls a little bit and make it what you want to be, then definitely a better way to go. So I really appreciate you delivering that point.
I'll be the first one to buy wings from you in a gimp suit, dude. Trust me. That's what you're doing, right? That's a great
Yeah,
idea.
it was a really early plant for this closing advertisement for my new bar, Dominatrix Wings. Yeah, Domo
Come for the
Wings.
wings, stay for the sting is
Yeah.
genius. I don't
Wait
care
till you
what
see the
anybody
logo.
says. Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be pixelated. It's not safe for work, folks. Uh,
Oh, mate, I've really
I think
enjoyed this.
that's
Go on.
what you said at the end is something that I've found speaking to a lot of friends that are English, even if they're like involved or British, I should say, involved in the media or something. The idea of like individual excellence feels very American to them. You're like, oh, I can't step out of the pack. So what you said, I think, is very important, which is, and whether it came from me or some of the other interviews you've had, it's like the idea of like you could just let the wind push your sail wherever it's going, or you can try to move it a little bit and say, what do I want my world to look like, and work towards that. So I'm excited to see what your business is, man. I can't.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. And yeah, when you're next over, it's a short train out of London. We'll have live sports. So
Buddy,
maybe I
done.
can
I'm there.
rustle up a homemade wig and kebab for you to save you the trip
Let's
up.
go. Roberto Martinez. And by the way, English people, it's Martinez, not Martinez. No one has ever been named Martinez. Martinez, bro. That's got the word T in it. Y'all love T. Martinez.
The clue was right there. It's hiding in plain sight.
Damn.
Oh, mate, this has been great. I really appreciate you spending the time. I'm glad we got this done. Didn't
Thank you,
disappoint at all.
man.
That door opening a few moments ago was basically a heads up that it's almost time to pick up the boys from nursery. So I better get some socks on and get
Go
dadding.
do that. All right, boss. Thank you for having me on, man. It's an honor.
Oh, mate, pleasure. Thanks for coming on. See you soon, mate. Take
All right,
care.
man. Take it easy.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can follow MPLH Studio wherever you listen and find more work from today's guest in the show notes. I'm Joseph Fordham. See you next time.